Hello, and welcome to Nostalgia Marcana. I'm your host, Doug Leaf. Each episode of this podcast, we'll look back on the movies, TV, games, people, and phenomena that we still love talking about all these years later, and ask ourselves why these bits of pop culture still enchant us today. This week, we'll be revisiting Can You Read My Mind? Do you know what it is you do to me? You made me watch Superman again, and that was a treat. So I'm really excited to talk about Superman, the movie. This is the quintessential superhero movie. It's the superhero movie, really, that every superhero movie afterwards owes a debt to. And it's just an easy breezy pleasure to watch. So this is going to be a fun discussion, and to help me along, we have a returning guest. You know him from our Karate Kid episode. He is a filmmaker in his own right. He makes storm chasing stuff in addition to all his Karate Kid content, and just an all around great guy. And I'm really excited to have him back. Ken Cole, everybody.
Well, thank you, Doug. It's very nice to be back. It's an honor, and I am so looking forward to our discussion today.
Yeah. So this was your pick, and so tell me why.
You know, I have to say, back when I was a kid growing up, it's not like today. You kind of alluded to the fact that really all superhero movies owe a debt to this movie. And when I was growing up, when I was young, it was even before the Tim Burton's Batman. This was kind of it. If you wanted to see grand, big screen superheroes, you really had this movie and this movie series. You had Christopher Reeve playing Superman. And it was wonderful, and it was great. At the time, the special effects were fantastic, and it was a shining example of how things on the comic book page could make it into real life and into movie screens, and something that just inspires your imagination. So I know it did for me and so many other kids growing up, but it's turned into a movie that I've just revisited so often since I've been young, and it holds up. It's just absolutely wonderful for so many different reasons.
Yeah, I have a lot of fond memories wrapped up in this one, and just like you, I'm old enough that Tim Burton's Batman would not come along until I was it 9? I think when that came out, and it was a game changer, and we're still planning on doing an episode on that movie and how wonderful it is. But you're right, like Superman kind of cornered the market, because there was nothing else. The only superhero content you could get was on the small screen. You had, reruns of Adam West's Batman and Linda Carter's Wonder Woman, and like the Incredible Hulk, and a handful of pretty crummy animated things. But this was it for superhero content. But it's still far and away one of the best superhero movies ever made, and there's a reason. It's the template for everything that came after it. As far as like being a kid. And in the 80s and loving Superman. Do you have any like specific memories tied to this?
Well, for me, for whatever reason, I never got heavy into comic books themselves. So I am definitely not approaching this as an expert of Superman comics. I've read a few over the years, but it was really these movies and toys, playing with the toys. But it was really these movies that I watched over and over again, including this one. And, I just wanted to be able to fly. This movie, for a young kid, it just made me want to fly. just that dream of flying. And so I remember, running outside and trying to run and see if I could run and jump high enough where I could fly, and just really being inspired by this movie. Those are probably some special memories for me.
The tagline for the movie is, of course, "You'll believe a man can fly." And that is the perfect tagline for this movie because, you mentioned, the special effects are good for 1978. And yes, you can sort of see the seams, watching it in 4K now. But I still believe a man can fly when I watch it because of Christopher Reeve elevating this character and this performance so much. It's just like, I still totally buy that he's flying. And you'll never tell me that Christopher Reeve couldn't fly in real life because it just feels like he could. And yes. I remember having a cape when I was a kid and definitely running around with it on all the time, pretending I could fly. I have two other kind of personal memories wrapped up in Superman. One is, one of my best friends is a big enthusiast of Superman and this film series in particular, but also the comics. Like you, I also never really read the comics. I read the Death of Superman run because that was a big event. Other than that, nothing. But because he was such a big fan and he was my best man at my wedding, for a gift, I got him an autographed headshot of Christopher Reeve.
Oh my gosh.
So that was cool. And then the other memory I have is on the negative side, which is, as far as horror movies go, they don't really scare me. Except for body horror. Body horror will definitely, that hits a nerve. And it goes right back to the end of Superman 3, which I still watch to this day. Because that's some fucked up shit. And I just remember seeing that. We were on a trip up to the mountains. We were in somebody's cabin and we rented a movie. There's a bunch of us there. And it was like, oh yeah, we'll watch Superman. That's fun. And scarred for life from the end of that movie.
That was surprisingly scary. And I think so many people actually agree with that. I've read so much about people being traumatized by that one scene you're talking about. So yes, I totally agree.
Yeah. And we're not talking about that today. We can touch on other films in the franchise, but really we're here to talk about the first one. Although it is a little hard to separate Superman from Superman 2 because of its well-known production issues.
Yes.
If you want to fill in on some of that, I know you know the story.
Oh, yes. Well, it's so fascinating because I loved watching these movies growing up. And then as we got into the internet age and I started looking up the movie on the internet, I started to learn about all these stories that I didn't know about, the behind the scenes, the making of Superman, the movie. And I always wondered growing up how Superman 2 was such a great sequel. It felt like they were so close to each other. And it was because they were intended to both shoot together. And that's what they did for a while. They hired Richard Donner. They hired Mario Puzo to come up with a story. There were a number of different writers, but Tom Mankiewicz, who was Richard Donner's pick to write the movie, he kind of rewrote everything. And it was it's a two-part epic. And so they were going to shoot both, and they did, at least all of Superman 1 and maybe 60 to 70% of Superman 2 was all shot by Richard Donner. But he had some problems with the producers and the financiers of these movies. And they basically, we can get into that drama later, but they fired him. And so the producers hired a new director, Richard Lester, to come in and finish Superman 2. And so some of that footage is Richard Donner's in the theatrical cut, and the majority is Richard Lester's. But that's why it's such a great sequel. Even the theatrical version, I think, is because they were conceived together, they were shot together. There was supposed to be a two-parter, an epic two-parter. So yes.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a lot of cohesion between the two, and you can feel that, right from the beginning. At the beginning of the movie, we have this trial of who will be the villains for the second movie. And it's obvious they're investing all of this time into this scene, which is they never appear again. They are sentenced to the Phantom Zone and they're gone from the movie. Yep. And you realize, it's because they're meant to come back in part 2.
You have heard the evidence. The decision of the council will now be heard.
Guilty.
Guilty.
Guilty. Guilty. The vote must be unanimous, Jor-El. It has therefore now become your decision. You alone will condemn us if you wish, and you alone will be held responsible by me. Join us. You have been known to disagree with the Council before. Yours could become an important voice in the new order, second only to my own. I offer you a chance for greatness, Jor-El. Take it. Join us. You will bow down before me, Jor-El. I swear it. No matter that it takes an eternity, you will bow down before me. Both you, and then one day, your heirs.
And but I will say, watching this movie, the pacing of this movie is a little interesting because you don't actually see Superman in the costume as like, or even Christopher Reeve himself until something like 47 minutes into the movie. You get a brief shot of him in his Superman outfit for the first time. And so the movie is spending a lot of time on this origin, way more so than you would expect in a modern superhero movie. In fact, I decided to watch a little bit of Man of Steel in preparation for this, just to sort of see like, hey, how does a different, team tackle basically the same plot? And yeah, they're in and out of Krypton in 15 minutes, right? They go through that very quickly. But I will say, watching it this time, I finally kind of felt like I understood the investment in that first chunk of the movie. Why do they spend so long on this? And even independently of the fact that some of it's coming back for Superman 2, I think thematically there's a lot of resonance between what happens on Krypton and in his teenage years, and then the rest of the film that's present day Superman.
Yeah, and what you're bringing up right now, I've heard a lot of people say is kind of a criticism of the movie, that it's like a movie at war with itself, because you have these three distinct parts to the movie. You have this science fiction section on Krypton. You have this sort of bucolic Americana section where, he's a teenager in school, and Jonathan Kent, passing away. And then you have like the comic book. Like once we get Christopher Reeve as Superman in Metropolis, it becomes a comic book, and they have very different tones to them. And some people say that that's kind of a detriment to Superman the movie. I don't know, because to me, I love epics, and the idea that it goes through these separate acts that each have their own tone, to me, it kind of builds up the character of Superman. That like he's spanning across all these different tones: science fiction, the essence of American life, and then action, comic book type things. I think it helps, but. Yeah, I understand where people are coming from that. How do you feel about that?
No, I'm in your camp. I think I used to be in the other camp of going like, gee, it takes us a long time to get to Superman and Lois and Lex Luthor, right, and the stuff we ostensibly care about. And the origin of Superman, in some sense, you want to yada yada that because we all know what happened, right? We know the story. He's from Krypton. Krypton is destroyed. He comes here. Why can't we just zoom past that? The same way that like Batman movies tend to, not linger too long on the death of Thomas and Martha Wayne, right? We get it. But I think in this film, they're doing stuff thematically with that especially with the Krypton section of the movie, that there's a lot of payoff for that investment that makes it worthwhile, right? For one thing, you get a lot about Jor-El, his father, being a person who cares about justice, right? But also someone who, you watch this person, he can only save one person, right? And this movie is a lot about, Superman's one limitation, which is that he can't be everywhere at once. That's his one weakness, really. Yes, there's kryptonite, but really his weakness is he can only save so many people. And watching Jor-El say, well, I can only save my son, and I could break the rules of the council and start warning everybody about the impending doom of Krypton, although I guess it's like 20 minutes away. So what could he really do?
Right.
But he, he could save himself and his wife. He doesn't. You're right. He could have built a ship for all three of them, but he doesn't. And it's like, he won't break the rules to save, he'll only save his son, right? That kind of mirrors the end of the movie, to jump way ahead, which is that Superman is going to, break the one rule his father sets out for him in order to save Lois. Right. So that's the kind of thing where I think there is this investment. And also, think about how the movie opens. Before we even get to Krypton, we get this oddball little thing of like they're reading the first Action Comics, the actual like comic of the original Superman #1, and the first thing they talk about is like the truth and the power of the Daily Planet. That's where they set the beginning of their movie.
In the decade of the 1930s, even the great city of Metropolis was not spared the ravages of the worldwide depression. In the times of fear and confusion, the job of informing the public was the responsibility of the Daily Planet, a great metropolitan newspaper whose reputation for clarity and truth had become a symbol of hope for the city of Metropolis.
And so much of the movie is actually about truth, right? Not just truth, justice in the American way, but like the value of journalism and truth. And that you marry that up with Krypton, right? Where Jor-El is forbidden from spreading the truth about what's happening in Krypton. And his son grows up to become a journalist. And so much of this is about like the journalism angle. And especially for the 70s, right? Coming out of Watergate, the veneration of journalism.
I love that. Yeah, well, 100%. And it's really heartening to me, I think, to see that now. We've had such a phase of movies that have been, I don't know, cynical, downbeat, very somber, gritty. And I always like returning to this movie because I wish we had a little more of that sensibility. And some might call it cornball, but I think we need that. We need to be reminded of the things we should be striving for, the virtues, the idea that journalism, we have such a skeptical view of journalism and media, or at least that idea is out there. Here we have an idea that yes, journalism is good. Pursuit of the truth is a good thing. And those original ideas of America, they're worth fighting for. And that's why I love the character of Superman. He doesn't mind coming off a bit corny, because he believes in it.
Well, they really just ride that line perfectly between having him be cornball and campy and being sincere. And they really just hit that bullseye of being sincere. The only other time, and you're right, there's that sense, I think, of like, in our modern era, could we have a hero like that? Do we want a hero that's like kind of that tone? And the proof is absolutely. Go watch Captain America, because Chris Evans' Captain America and Christopher Reeve's Superman are absolutely of a piece. Like, it's the same tone of like, golly gee whiz America, but also like that's noble, right? There is a nobility to that is incredibly attractive in those two characters.
Yeah. Oh yeah. 100%. And I like, especially in this movie, you do bring up the point that they're kind of aware of that and they're walking that line. And, that classic scene where Superman saves Lois from falling down the building and he grabs a helicopter and then they land on the roof and then he puts her down and then he says, now, I hope this hasn't put you off of flying. And he takes a second and he goes back. Statistically speaking, it is the safest way to fly.
Gentlemen, this man needs help. Well, I certainly hope this little incident hasn't put you off flying, miss. Statistically speaking, of course, it's still the safest way to travel.
Right. Wait! Who are you?
A friend. Bye.
And she's like, oh yeah, that's fine. And he walks away with a smile on his face. And it's like, it's a corny line, but he's almost like just amused. Like he gets it. It's like there's a wink to the audience. And That's what I love about this movie is it walks that line. It knows Superman's roots, and Superman sometimes is a little self-aware that what he's saying is a little corny, but it's that line that Christopher Reeve walks. Oh my goodness, what a performance. I just watched it again in preparation for our discussion, and Christopher Reeve, I am just astounded at how good he is in that role as Superman. And he could be the best actor to play a superhero. And certainly there was no template for this. And he was an unknown actor, and he walked in and he just owned this role. Really, really incredible.
It's a very special performance, in the history of movies, because what you're asking him to do, you're right. It's again, there's no template. He is a Juilliard trained actor, so I mean, he's got the chops. Mm-hmm. He had to work to get the physique. He was a string bean before he started training for this. But I mean, he isn't like Chris Hemsworth, Thor ripped, but he's, this broad-shouldered, tall guy, and like you just couldn't picture a better actor to play Superman. And I actually like both Brandon Routh and Henry Cavill in the role. I don't think the scripts or the movies they were in gave them the chance to do what they're capable of. They're both wonderful actors, but this performance is kind of on another level because of what you like. This like we said, this tightrope act that he has to walk between being charming and formidable, but also grounded and believable. Like it's a miracle that it works as well as it does.
Oh yes, and what I think is fascinating and really unique about his performance is that duality of Clark Kent and Superman. The way Christopher Reeve plays Clark Kent, he's like this very awkward, kind of hokey goofball, physically transforming himself into someone that, even though maybe his face looks like Superman, he's acting so differently that he's disguising himself that way. And we, in those other performances you mentioned, we really don't see that change. And I think there's that great moment when he considers telling Lois who he is in the first movie, and he straightens up and he takes off his glasses, and all of a sudden it's Superman. And then he changes his mind and he hunches back over and he puts on his glasses, and it's like you're seeing two different characters from the same actor. Just beautifully done. Wonderful.
Yeah.
Hi. Can I come in?
Oh, yeah.
Lois, for goodness sake, didn't you hear me knocking?
Uh-huh.
Lois, we did have a date tonight, remember?
Oh.
Lois?
Huh?
You haven't been,
Oh, no.
Well, I should certainly hope not. Well, let's, push off, shall we?
I better get a coat. It might be kind of cold up. No, I mean, I need a person. I have to fix my hair and some blush on.
Lois, there's something I have to tell you. I'm really... I was, at first, really nervous about tonight. But then I decided, well, darn it, I was going to show you the time of your life.
That's Clark, nice.
I mean, it is a sort of just inherent goofy weakness in the original material that, how does Lois never, this perceptive journalist not notice this guy, hey, wait a minute, if he took off his glasses, he looked like Superman. Yes. So they have to work within those constraints, but within those constraints, my God, yeah, that scene you're talking about where it's like he transforms his whole body and his voice, and it's like as much as you can do to differentiate these two characters, he does it masterfully. And that scene is great that they give you the chance to literally kind of just like move the slider from Superman to Clark Kent and back again.
Right.
It's really just masterful acting. Like physical acting too, just on every level.
Yes, and also a shout out to Margot Kidder, who plays Lois Lane, because the way she approached the character, she had said that throughout her life she had seen so many women who do this thing where if there's a man that's potentially a love interest or someone that they're interested in, they behave one way, they, maybe awestruck, but those same women that she observed, can easily be dismissive of someone that they don't evaluate as like relationship material or someone to pay attention to. And she brought that to Lois, where she's very dismissive of Clark Kent. Like, the first impression of Clark, he's kind of bumbling, she's friends with him, but she's not really, looking at him as like a love interest or someone. It's someone who's safe. And I think that helps what you're talking about, the constraints, because she's kind of blinded by her bias towards Clark Kent and being dismissive towards him, versus when she has the attention of Superman. That's totally different in her brain. And you can kind of see her brain go in two different ways. And I think that also enhances, those constraints. It's a great way to deal with those constraints, I think.
Yeah, there's also, there's a duality to her performance as well. But she never really loses her spunkiness, though. No. And like, she is the progenitor of a long line of, kind of spunky female reporter types in comic book movies, whether that's literally reporters like, Kim Basinger as Vicky Vale in Batman, the April O'Neil in the Ninja Turtles movie. You've got characters like a lot of Marvel characters that are like, like say Natalie Portman in the Thor movies, right? It's, again, this like spunky female presence that all goes back to this performance by Margot Kidder, because even when she's kind of awestruck by Superman, she never quite loses her, her identity, and that, she never gives herself over to that entirely. Even in the flying sequence, she's still kind of her, and especially given the fact that he drops her in that scene, right? Like what the ultimate nerve of Superman to do that to her. It's like, it's pretty fucked up in a way. There's a very funny YouTube video. You can find it where someone edited that, where, the scene's going along and he drops her and she goes, ah, and then they just cut to him flying at the very end of the movie. And that's it. Oh, no. Basically like, that's it. I killed Lois, the end of the movie. But she's such the linchpin of the story. And I really like that they kind of hold back on her feelings for Superman until Superman 2, because we get a lot. Obviously, Superman is totally head over heels for her. We don't get a lot of her reciprocating that in this movie. They really save that, and it adds a lot, I think, to that end of the movie, because it means a lot to him to save her. She doesn't at the end. She obviously doesn't even realize it happened.
Right. And it makes sense, right? Because she's meeting this person, the world is meeting this person for the first time, Superman, and she's absolutely awestruck. But it takes time for her to sort of absorb that, and it's only in the second movie where that starts to become a possibility. And I just think it was a great decision, I think, to make that story into 2 movies.
Yeah, you kind of save some of those bullets for later. Yes. We haven't talked about the villains yet, and there's a few. Yes, you have Lex Luthor, who is the quintessential Superman villain, and I think the perfect foil for him, because he is not superpowered. He is just an ordinary guy. And this particular iteration of Lex Luthor is interesting because he's not even kind of like the tycoon as he's often played. Right here, he's just like, he doesn't have much of a team. He's got bumbling Otis, Ned Beatty, and Miss Tessmacher, and that's it. That's his whole criminal organization. And their plan is sort of oddly modest in a way. They're not trying to destroy the entire world. They just want to make a big crack in California for some real estate development.
Right.
Last, it's official. Thanks to the generous help of the United States government, we are about to be involved in the greatest real estate swindle of all time.
Lex, what is this obsession with real estate? All the time, land, land, land.
Miss Tessmacher, when I was 6 years old, my father said to me,
"Get out."
Before that, he said, "Son, stocks may rise and fall. Utilities and transportation systems may collapse. People are no damn good, but they will always need land, and they'll pay through the nose to get it. Remember, my father said, land." Right. It's a pity that He didn't see from such humble beginnings how I've created this empire.
An empire? This?
Miss Tessmacher, how many girls do you know who have a Park Avenue address like this one?
Park Avenue address? 200 feet below?
Do you realize what people are shelling out up there for a few miserable rooms off a common elevator? What more could anyone ask?
Yeah, it's a great team, and I know I've heard from fans, Superman fans of the comics, that Ned Beatty's character Otis is kind of not a fan favorite, but for movie fans like myself, I mean, just such an amazing combination, amazing trio: Lex Luthor, Otis, and Miss Tessmacher. Ned Beatty is a genius, and I think if we're talking about the villains, what this movie did well, and I know Christopher Nolan did this when he went into Batman Begins, the lesson he took from it, or one of the big ones, was casting great actors. And that's what you have. You have, even though Christopher Reeve is a great actor, he was unknown at the time, but they surrounded him with great actors. Gene Hackman, amazing to have him on board. And Valerie Perrine's a great actor. She nails it with Miss Tessmacher. And you're right. It's like a very comic, funny performance by Gene Hackman as Lex Luthor. And it's almost like a lot of clowning by Otis, a lot of gags, very entertaining to watch. But then at those key moments, you see the ruthlessness of Lex Luthor when his plan is revealed that he's actually going to cause part of the state of California to fall into the ocean so he can get a great land deal. You see that ruthlessness come out, and it doesn't come out for very long. He's not a sneering villain, but it's such a shift that it's like, oh man, we got to take this guy seriously. It's that interesting gravity that Gene Hackman has of playing comedy, but also having this undercurrent of like deadly seriousness to it. And so I love the performance, and it's in contrast, you could say, to Terrence Stamp. We see him briefly, as you mentioned at the beginning of the movie. He plays almost like this theatrical, classical villain. And, of course, we get that back in Superman 2, but, and then we get to see those characters kind of meet again in Superman 2. But, yeah, just great villains, in this movie. Yeah. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, to me, Gene Hackman is, in a way, I mean, he's my Lex Luthor because he's the one I grew up with. Even though I really like Clancy Brown in the animated series, he's great. That's more the tycoon Luthor, who has much more resources. He has this more public persona that's seemingly legitimate, and not like this one who's literally living 200 feet below Fifth Avenue and Phantom of the Opera style. But you're right about that. He seems very kind of charming and funny, but the menace comes in when you realize he has absolutely no regard for human life at all. Mm-hmm. Yes. And it's extremely cavalier. And you look at the ecological disaster he's causing, and it's not terribly dissimilar from the Kryptonian disaster at the beginning of the movie, which again, like, that investment is paying off, and we're going to destroy this, not the entire planet, but a good chunk of land and everybody with it. And Superman, just like his father, has an opportunity to stop that from happening. Only this time, of course, because he's on Earth, he has the superpowers to do something about it. Mm-hmm. But even again, he can't do everything because once again, he can't. There's two missiles. He can't get to them both in time. And I love that's all part of Gene Hackman's plan that he puts together so quickly. Like he sees one headline about Superman and he reads Lois's article and he knows everything he needs to know to instigate this plan. They're getting to Otis and Tessmacher. So yeah, Ned Beatty is a genius, and you don't need me to tell you this. Go watch his monologue from Network. One of the finest pieces of acting in cinema history. One of the most intimidating things I've ever seen anybody do on screen. It's absolutely wild. And so to see him, and this is after Network, so now he's playing a very, low status character, but he's still nonetheless entrusted with like reprogramming these missiles. Like he's not totally inept.
Right.
So they kind of get enough mileage out of him as a henchman. Tessmacher is interesting. I don't know what she doesn't add as much to the criminal enterprise. She's mostly probably just there to gratify Luthor. But I love her turn. She can't kill Superman. He's too charming. He's too nice. She says, she kisses him while he's got the kryptonite, chained to his neck. And she says, "Why did you do?" She kisses him, and he says, "Why did you do that? Why didn't you take the thing off?" And he says, "Well, I didn't think you'd let me."
Why did you kiss me first?
I didn't think you'd let me later.
Thank you, Miss Tessmacher.
Why is it I can't get it on with the good guys?
Stand aside now. I wouldn't stay here either.
Right.
It's very sweet and kind of innocent and charming.
Right. And I loved that moment in particular. I loved you talk about Lex Luthor's just disregard for human life. He kind of made his own bed when he targeted Hackensack, New Jersey, which is Miss Tessmacher's mother's home. So that's the only reason that Superman got out of it. And it kind of shows you he's a smart man, but I guess he's so clueless about where Miss Tessmacher's mother even lives. He doesn't care. And that's what ends up foiling him. It's kind of a nice touch, I think.
Yeah, he's immensely arrogant. That is part of his whole steez as a villain, is that arrogance. And who could imagine an evil real estate developer from New York with no regard for human life becoming president in the comics? Anyway, but I digress. Although I've heard that this performance was actually partly based on Donald Trump. Even in the 70s, we knew he was a shitbag.
Wow. That is absolutely fascinating.
Yeah.
And the other thing, you talk about this interpretation of Lex Luthor, and from my understanding, Gene Hackman did not want to sign on to this movie to play Lex Luthor with a bald cap. He did not want to wear the bald cap. And so they had to figure out a way to not have him wear a bald cap. And so they did that with like the wigs. They show the wigs. And so his hair changes. And then he does wear a bald cap briefly at the end of the first movie and the beginning of the second movie. But I'm wondering if that sort of informed this change in the character, where they make him a bit more offbeat, underground, kind of quirky with the wigs, that type of thing, to maybe give him his own identity and let Gene Hackman play a character that makes sense for him as opposed to adhering to the comics.
Well, I love the idea that he wears all these wigs.
Yeah.
I think it's additive because it goes to his vanity and just, again, like pushes that arrogance part of the character, really puts that forward. And it's such a really great comic moment when the wig comes off at the end of the movie. It's a great payoff for that, because we're all thinking, isn't this character bald? And so when they finally do it, it's so great. And they've got Otis there trying to be his hype man there as he's dragged into prison by Superman. And it's interesting, they don't even give you like a confrontation scene. Superman solves the crisis that Lex Luthor has created, and we don't see him like apprehend Luthor. We just cut to the prison and Superman's dropping him off because he's a god. Like what's Lex Luthor going to do once Superman really gets his hands on him?
Right.
It's great.
Yeah, I know there's. I've heard this word joy a lot lately, especially in the conversations about superhero movies, and this movie has joy. I think even in Gene Hackman's performance as Lex Luthor, it's a joyous performance, even though he's a villain. And of course, Christopher Reeve, Margot Kidder, Ned Beatty, everyone else, such a joyful performance. And it just contributes to this movie having heart. And I think that's why I keep coming back to it again and again, because it has heart. You believe in these people, and you get a sense that the entire production knew that they were making something special. And I don't know, it just kind of exudes joy. It puts me in a good mood.
Yeah, no, you're right. Again, it has this very light touch to it that is, again, it's this masterful balancing of tones that it never, that lightness never takes it all the way into Adam West campiness, where, you know, you can feel that almost like waiting off screen of like, it'd be so easy for them to do that. Like, you know, you get a couple of really lame jokes out of Jimmy Olsen or something, and then like we're in that realm.
Right.
But it never does. Like, Christopher Reeve grounds this so much because for all of his, like, the way he charmingly kind of tosses off lines, it's interesting that we kind of you get a good sense of who this character is, because I mean, obviously he's not the Clark Kent that we see in the glasses. We do get the younger Clark Kent, which is voiced by Christopher Reeve, dubbing over I forget the other actor's name.
Yes. Jeff East.
Thank you, Jeff East. But those scenes of him in Smallville are important because you see how kind of low status he is, and he's kind of bucking against that. Like, you know, I can kick this football into space if I want. I can do all of these amazing things, and I have to keep it a secret. And so kind of that like joy of kind of letting that out of like, yeah, I'm just going to fly up the side of a building and catch a burglar, you know, very cavalierly, and just bring him back down and drop him off at a police officer's feet. You see that kind of twinkle in his eye that he's like, I'm getting to do it. Right. I have to keep my identity a secret, but I'm at least getting to use all these powers I have. And then we should talk a bit about Marlon Brando.
Oh, yes.
Because, first of all, again, talk about bringing in a heavy hitter of an actor. They don't get much heavier hitting than Marlon Brando. And he brings such a, kind of this noble gravitas. He reminds me a little bit of like Mufasa from The Lion King. Like, you kind of need, and he kind of does the same shtick of appearing in the clouds. But, You need that. You need like both of Superman's fathers to sort of be these competing voices of advice for him. And I'll let you talk about your thoughts on Marlon Brando.
Yeah, I mean, this was something I think by the producers. Richard Donner had a lot of problems with these producers, but I think the one thing they really did was they spent money, at least up front, on these really big names, and Marlon Brando was the biggest. I think they were very transfixed by the success of the Godfather movies. They hired Mario Puzo to come up with the story. They wanted Brando, such a great actor who's also in the Godfather, to give them that dramatic weight that this is a serious adult cinematic experience. And that name is something that they could sell to everyone. And, they did not have an easy time getting him. He charged a lot of money for his little role. He wanted $5 million. And I think he's in the
$78.
In $1978, what's that got to be? Like somewhere between 10 and 15 million today, probably. At least. And so they had to convince him to be part of this, and they had to come up with the money. And even then, he had gotten to the point where he refused to memorize lines. So they needed to write all his lines on cue cards and constantly have cue cards off screen so he could read his lines as he was performing. And, it's something that Christopher Reeve actually years later was disappointed in Marlon Brando for not giving it his all or his full effort in the way that Christopher Reeve would like to commit to a character. And so I thought that was interesting. But regardless, it's Marlon Brando. I mean, he's just such a towering talent and great actor that he just lent that gravitas. And you're right, his tone was perfect as Jor-El, everything he needed to be. We have him at the beginning. We have him really giving him a lot of exposition, giving Kal-El a lot of exposition about who he is. And then, of course, he's that voice of moral certitude at the end that, you shall not interfere with human history. And, I can't think of really a better actor that could do that.
You will travel far, my little Kal-El. But we will never leave you. even in the face of our death. The richness of our lives shall be yours. All that I have, all that I've learned, everything I feel, all this and more I bequeath you, my son. You will carry me inside you all the days of your life. You will make my strength your own. See my life through your eyes, as your life will be seen through mine. The son becomes the father, and the father the son. This is all I can send you. Kal-El.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about him, he's only, giving it 15% of a performance. And you think, that's what 15% of a performance looks like from this guy? Holy crap. I mean, and if you want to see 100%, go watch his filmography. I mean, go watch On the Waterfront, go watch Godfather, go watch all these other things he did, Streetcar. He's incredible. And here, it's so interesting because he does so much by doing relatively little. Like he never gets, he's faced with the impending doom of his planet, and he doesn't, the needle doesn't move above a 3. Like he kind of faces everything very calmly and stoically. He just knows what he has to do and does it. And, but it's like you realize how essential he is, in that when they made Superman Returns, they said, we're going to use Brando footage we're not going to cast a new Jor-El for the stuff we're going to use. We'll just use unused Marlon Brando stuff, because nobody could do that better. Right.
Yeah, indeed. And it's probably a whole different discussion, but as you know, Brando was supposed to be in Superman 2, and he shot those scenes as Jor-El in Superman 2, but the producers did not want to pay him. I think it was another $5 million to put those scenes in Superman 2. So they cut him out and they put in Susanna York as Superman's mom in his place. And so it was only when we finally got the Superman 2 Richard Donner cut that we finally got to see those scenes with Jor-El. But that's an interesting discussion, maybe for another time.
Yeah, I will. I've not actually watched the Donner cut of Superman 2. I'm curious. What do you think? It's superior to the theatrical release, or
no? I don't.
Okay.
I think it's amazing that it happened, and I waited so many years once I learned that there was footage there to see it, and it's wonderful to see that footage, but it's not a finished movie. And so it gives you an idea of what it might have been, but it's very clear that, for instance, the ending is the same as Superman 1, because that was originally the ending to Superman 1 was originally the ending to Superman 2. But they just decided to heighten the ending of Superman 1 by bringing that into the first movie, and they were going to figure something else out when they went back to finish shooting Superman 2. But they never got to do that. At least the Richard Donner version, they never got to do that. So it's the same ending. It's they're using musical cues from the first movie, the John Williams cues. They don't always line up. Some of the scenes were rough. There's a great scene where Lois discovers who Superman is. She has a suspicion. She fires a gun at him. The footage is from a test, like an audition, test screening, and it's not like finished movie quality. So the quality is a bit uneven. I would say that, yeah, I know it has its fans, but Superman 2, the theatrical version, is the finished film. It's a finished film that I think is very enjoyable. And then if you love it, I think it's worth checking out the Richard Donner cut.
It's a curiosity, basically.
Yes.
Yeah.
For us, for fans, it's wonderful to have and wonderful to see it. But I don't think you would take that as your main Superman 2.
Do you have a favorite moment from Superman 1?
What comes to mind is the first flight with Lois. With John Williams' music. Can You Read My Mind? That's the theme of that. I love that sequence. That's great.
Can you read my mind? Do you know what it is that you do to me? I don't know who you are. Just a friend from another star. Here I am, like a kid out of school, holding hands with a god. I'm a fool.
There's so many great moments. Of course, there's the ending moment when Lois Lane dies and Superman is in grief and he just shoots right up into space and he starts flying super fast. That's pretty epic. I always really was taken by that and still am, just that pure raw emotion in Christopher Reeve.
My son,
It is forbidden for you to interfere in human business. One thing I do know, son, and that is you are here for a reason.
All those things I can do, all those powers, and I couldn't even save him.
You know, and that's an interesting question too, because a lot of people, you know, they see how he's flying around the Earth and it looks like he's turning the world backwards. But then, you know, other people watching it will say, well, no, what he's doing is he's flying faster than light. Like he's basically going back in time. So it looks like the Earth is turning backwards because he's going backwards in time. And I don't know if you have thoughts on that, but I don't know. What do you think? And yeah, what's your favorite moment?
So to answer the first question, yeah, I'm with you. I think he's traveling back in time. If he was literally just, first of all, he was just rotating the Earth backwards, that wouldn't reverse time. That would just cause irreparable harm to everyone living here, which kind of goes against his whole thing of murdering everyone on Earth. So I don't think that's what he's doing. As far as whether it's it's an interesting ending because this is a lot like the Ghostbusters "Don't Cross the Streams" stuff, where you get this immense warning from Jor-El, like, "Don't do this." There's no harm. There's no consequence. Everybody's fine. He saves the day. So I'm not sure. That feels like a little bit of an unfinished thought. But as far as a favorite moment, I love all the Krypton stuff because I think the look of Krypton, how alien it is. You know, it's this like, it almost seems like a frozen wasteland. It's hard to imagine what it's like to actually just live there. It's so different, which I love. Like the Krypton you see in Man of Steel is much closer to the way Krypton is usually rendered in the comics. But I like this better. This crystalline, strange world is really cool. They're glowing suits, kind of reminds me of like a Tron a little bit, the way their just clothes light up. It's just, you never see anything like this, and it's so unique to those two films, and it's that's really special. But as far as like a character moment, it's probably the interview.
How old are you?
Over 21.
Oh, I get it. You don't want anyone to know how old. Okay. And how big are you? How tall are you?
About 6'4".
6'4". And how much do you weigh?
Around 225.
225? I assume then that the rest of your bodily functions are normal?
Sorry, beg your pardon?
Well, putting it delicately.
Mm-hmm.
Do you eat?
Yes. Yes, I do. When I'm hungry.
You do?
I really love that scene where Superman shows up at Lois's loft and she starts questioning him, you know, how big are you? And he, for the second, like, oh, you put a dick joke in Superman. That's pretty neat.
Right.
He says, okay. No, I'm 6'4", about 225. And,
right.
It gets pretty coy about him using his X-ray vision to see her underwear. But amidst all of that stuff, there is these two characters feeling each other out.
Yes.
And getting to know each other. There's this, they establish this kind of intimacy between them so quickly. And a lot of it is just, this idea of like Superman wanting to, let me do the things I can do. I want to say the things I'm not supposed to say. Mm-hmm. Because, a lot of the struggles with writing for Superman, as everyone always talks about, is, what do you do with this guy who is, basically invulnerable, right? You look at what are his vulnerabilities. His vulnerabilities are usually, other than kryptonite, the well-being of the people around him. And his, you can't, punch him, you can't put a bullet through him, but his heart is very human and vulnerable. And like you said, that moment at the end, he lets out this like primal scream.
Yeah. Which
is like, I'm the most powerful being in the universe, and I'm impotent to stop this problem. Now, of course, it turns out he can solve it. But that is something that I think is a wellspring of great ideas for this character of, what you can do a lot with him emotionally. That, like if you want to look at like, where this goes and where it goes wrong, it's like, there's too many, all the Snyderverse shit about what if Superman was evil, right? What if he used his powers for evil instead of good? And it's like, you don't want that from Superman. That's what Dr. Manhattan is for. Those kinds of questions, right? Go watch Watchmen and think about the abuse of power by superheroes. That's what those stories are about. But Christopher Reeve Superman is, I think that's the character angle you got to take on him.
Yeah. 100%. And you asked me about my favorite moment, and I totally forgot. I love the entire helicopter sequence on top of the Daily Planet with Lois, and then the public reveal of Superman in that moment. That might be, to this day, my favorite reveal moment for a superhero in a movie.
What the hell's that?
Easy, miss. I've got you.
You've got me. Who's got you? I can't believe it. I just cannot believe it. He got her.
I just love how that was conceived. I loved how it was edited. And I love the fact that it's happening in front of a crowd. The peril feels real. We have Lois. It's well into the movie, as you said, well into the movie, probably about halfway through the movie when we really see Superman finally doing the Superman things. But he is saving someone we care about so much, and we don't know what's going to happen. And I think I still have that lump in my throat because I think back, what did audiences think in 1978? They had never seen a sequence like this before. What was Superman going to do? What was it going to look like, for Superman to take flight for the first time? And it's just such you can just sense the excitement and joy from the filmmakers around that sequence on that reveal of Superman.
Yeah, so it's a great moment. You get that fantastic line from Margot Kidder. She says, "I got you," and he says, "You got me. Who's got you?"
Right.
It's so it feels like at last Superman has arrived, right? And then they give you, it's like, okay, we know you've been kind of waiting for this, so we're going to give you this whole montage of him fighting crime, stopping muggers or this like jewel heist or whatever this guy's doing up the side of a building, that boat full of gang members or whatever they are. It almost makes you wonder, like, gee, if you were mugged the night before, you're probably wondering, like, where was this guy? But it's still a great reveal. It reminds me a little bit, to talk about other superhero movies. You look at Sam Raimi's Spider-Man, and you spend a lot of time with Peter Parker, but we don't really get him in the Spider-Man suit, the proper Spider-Man suit, until pretty far into that movie, about the same amount of time, probably about an hour or more before we see him web slinging around like he's supposed to. And there's a reason, like, we have that moment in that movie where he runs towards the camera and opens up the front of his shirt. It's literally the exact callback to this scene. But even then, this movie is not afraid to kind of get meta and play with the tropes, because they have that great joke where he runs up to a phone booth where you expect he's going to change into Superman's outfit in the phone booth. And it's like, it's just a phone. It's like it's not a booth.
Right.
And he's like, and you can see in his mind go like, oh shit, I can't do it here. They're willing to play with your expectations as well.
Yes. Yeah. Really amazing that they were able to walk that line. And, talking about the making of the movie, what you're talking about, like veering into campiness, veering into sort of broad humor, Adam West style, that was the tone of the original script. So when Donner was signed on, Richard Donner, who had done The Omen at that point, he went on to do Goonies, Lethal Weapon, all these things. He's a great director. When he signed on to do it, the script he got was very long and it was full of just very campy humor. And that's why he brought in Tom Mankiewicz to completely do a rewrite, because it was important for him. He talked about verisimilitude. It has to be going for reality, make it grounded, make it real. And so all of that campiness he threw out. And they managed to find the exact right tone of how to approach Superman, where he would exist in our reality, but there's still that lightness and that wink, that meta quality.
Yeah. Now, there is one element of the movie we haven't really talked about yet, but I think we need to spend a little time on, and that's John Williams. Because, like, in a career, like, you think about, like, a career that's basically all crown jewels. Nobody writes a heroic march like John Williams, and it's like, Indiana Jones, it's slam dunk, Star Wars, slam dunk, like all of these movies, Jurassic Park, over and over again. But this one's pretty special, I think, even among all of John Williams's work. This theme, it's like, I feel bad for anyone trying to make a Superman movie now, whether it was, Bryan Singer or Zack Snyder, where it's like, you just can't top it. It's sort of like the Danny Elfman Batman theme. Like, it's just, it's like this music is that character. And of course, the old story, I think I think the first time was it Richard Donner heard is, you made the music say Superman. Like it,
right.
You can hear it, in a way, but like it's heroic, but also kind of like playful and sort of like you get that sensitive side to it. There's so much about this score that is just mind blowing in a career of, like I said, legendary stuff.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And you'll find that, I think you're exactly right. John Williams himself, I think, loves this and is very proud of it. He plays it quite often still when he conducts his music. The Superman theme comes up again and again. And I think he loves it. It's one of probably his favorite works. And it was such an amazing time. The production designer for Superman the movie also was production designer on Star Wars. And then they got John Williams, coming off of Star Wars, to do Superman the movie. And just the timing of that is just absolutely incredible. John Williams, regardless, I know people who are into music have different opinions of John Williams from a compositional standpoint, but no, to me, he is like probably the greatest movie composer of all time. And no, I don't think anyone can dispute that. He has come up with so many signature themes from so many beloved properties that he has a certain amount of magic. And you're right. He was able to bring that, what Richard Donner said, that Superman, he was able to say it, but he was able to give Superman his musical identity. And I think he spoiled it for everyone coming after him. And so much so, right, that Bryan Singer used it. I mean, he used it for Superman Returns, John Williams' theme.
It wouldn't have felt right without it. Like it's
right.
just, it's such a part of the character. And you figure an audience that was going to see this movie in 1978, they might have had some familiarity with the George Reeves show. I mean, I don't remember what the theme to that is, but there was some musical identity for Superman. But this is so stellar that, like, you think of that long title sequence, which is just, still one of my favorite title sequences in movies. And I'm just watching, names come at me in neon on the screen, but I'm transfixed by it largely because it's buoyed by this like incredible piece of music. And it just puts you in the right headspace. And then especially that as it transitions, like, it does this entire like 3-minute or whatever, like explosive march. And then we get into that really cool music that introduces us to Krypton. That's sort of like regal and, it almost feels musically angular the same way Krypton looks. Like it's really just incredible stuff from him. Again, like I said, even among all of his other film scores, I think this one stands pretty tall.
Absolutely. And I love everything about it. You're right, Doug. It's like there's so many wonderful pieces to that score. And one of the great things for us as fans is if you get, I think even on the DVD, but on the Blu-ray, they have the score only track. So if you want, you can watch the movie with only listening to the music. You don't have to listen to dialogue. You can watch the movie and just listen to the music. And I think that's wonderful. And they don't offer that all the time.
Every once in a while, they'll do these things where they'll, you can go see a movie and they'll have a live orchestra replace that. I don't know if they've done it for this movie, but that would be a treat, I think, to have a live orchestra playing this score because it's so exceptional all the way through. Yeah, I mean, the march itself is, the marquee part of it, but it's excellent throughout the entire piece. So.
Yes.
So we're coming up on time a little bit, but Ken, I'll ask you the question I always ask everybody, which is, why do you think it is we're still enamored with this particular Superman movie? I mean, we've had other Superman stuff since. There's no dearth of Superman content, but this particular movie, I think, still is the benchmark in a lot of ways. And I just wanted to hear your thoughts on why I think this has endured.
I think it's endured because it has tapped into those same qualities that has made the character of Superman endure. And it's at the beginning of this discussion, we talked about those values, those aspirational values, those virtues of truth, seeking truth, of justice, and as Superman says, the American way. But I think it's those things that appeal to us. We want to see that in someone. We would like someone to come along and lead us who has all of these great qualities, who can, as Jarrell said, they just need a light to show the way. We want to see that light, and Superman is that light. And this movie understands that. And I think where other adaptations maybe slightly go off the rails is those adaptations don't understand these special core qualities that make the character Superman unique and also classic. And by this movie, Richard Donner's movie, tapping into those core qualities, that makes this movie a classic. And I think people, if they're able to look beyond the special effects, maybe not being up to modern standards, and look again at the writing and the characters and the performance and the ideas, it's a movie with heart, and I think it fills the hearts of viewers, even generations later.
Yeah, I agree, and I kind of alluded to this before, but that whole idea of you'll believe a man can fly. The reason you believe that he can fly is because of what Christopher Reeve brings to it. I believe he can fly.
Yes.
Because he is this, he is a Boy Scout. but that is, like you said, it's aspirational. In a world where we're constantly struggling for, an inspiration, he is what, Jor-El says he should be, right? You can't manipulate human history, but you can lead them by example. And I think this is, again, it's the reason why, again, Chris Evans' Captain America works. He's probably my favorite character in the MCU because of this exact same quality, right? We meet him in that movie, basically, trying his best while he's getting beat up by a bully, and he keeps getting back up and says, what's his line? I can do this all day. Right. And it's exactly this template. Christopher Reeve puts the heart and soul of this character first, above all the special effects, above, all the, shooting lasers out of his eyes and flying around. And, I think some of that stuff that we don't even see until Superman 2, the cold breath, all these other powers he has, because the superpower he ultimately has, it's not the strength of his arms or his, it's the strength of his heart. And that sounds corny, and, it should be, except, we sort of desperately need that. And Superman, the movie, gives us that in just a perfectly distilled way.
Yeah, indeed.
All right, we should probably start bringing this to a close. But Ken, thanks again for a wonderful discussion. Tell the good folks here where they can find your work.
Absolutely. Anyone who's interested in seeing my stuff, you can go to my YouTube channel, which is Ken Cole, and I have pretty much all of my previous work there, as well as my new work. I do lots of content. Podcast, KenCast, you can watch live, and I record discussions and interviews about all different shows and topics, including Karate Kid and Cobra Kai. And yeah, find me there, or you can find me on social media, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, at Kennergy Cole. That's my handle. And if you come by, say hi, drop me a comment, drop me a message. Love to see you.
Cool. And of course, if you want to drop us any feedback, you can tweet it at NostalgianPod, or you can find us on Instagram. And I encourage you to follow us there, because I'm putting out bonus stuff there every week to go with each episode. So please follow us on Instagram. And of course, if you like the show, rate, review it wherever you found it, tell a friend, and all that jazz. If you have thoughts on our recent episodes, which include our last one was Homestar Runner. Before that, Adventures in Babysitting. We've done the Beatles recently. Don't Tell Mom the Babysitter's Dead. And I'm not 100% sure on what's coming up next. I do know that we are recording a Jurassic Park episode for the 30th anniversary of that movie. There's a few episodes between now and then, so scheduling permitting, I think we've got Rocky is in the mix. We're going to do, we're talking about doing a episode on our favorite Disney songs. So good stuff to be had coming down the pike. I just had to figure out where it all fits in the schedule. So, but Ken, thanks again one more time for dropping by. This was great.
Thank you, Doug. It's a pleasure to be here.
All right. And until next time, that is one more entry in the Nostalgium Arcana.
Two.
You have a reservation?
Superman.
I don't see anything.
Might be under Man of Steel.
Man of Steel. Man of Steel. Oh, yeah, Man of Steel. Right here. This way.
Man of Steel. Why do you do that?
Want to sit by the kitchen?
No.
No, you don't. I mean, how can they put this much mayonnaise on tuna fish and expect people to eat it?
Why do you care? You're invulnerable to harm.
It's not harm. It's too rich. Makes me queasy.
Send it back.
Ah.
We got a little... napkin?
Why? It's impervious to stain.
Excuse me. Superman?
Yes.
I don't know if you remember me, Barry Katz. You saved my life once. I was hanging from a train trestle.
Yeah, sure. How are you?
Oh, terrific. Great. I don't want to interrupt your meal. I just wanted to say thanks again.
No, not a problem. It's good to see you again, Barry.
Yeah. He's the best. You're good, too.
Thank you.
Who was that? No idea.
So you want to help me hook up this DVD?
Well, I thought we were going cycling.
Cycling with you is no fun.
Why not?
It's just not.